Welcome to Cape Breton Movers and Shakers, where we have conversations with people who are doing interesting things here in Cape Breton. I'm Richard Lorway, president of goCapeBreton.com, and today I'm talking with Jeremy White, founder and alesmith of Big Spruce Brewing in Nyanza, Cape Breton. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
So how did Big Spruce get started?
Well, it was sort of a fortuitous step and a rather knee-jerk one. My wife Mel and I had chosen to relocate back to Canada after 13 or so years of living and working overseas. And because of happenstance, and I suppose a little bit of lack of affordability in the two jurisdictions we were from in Canada, Vancouver and Toronto, we had decided to locate back to Canada here in Cape Breton. We bought this 75-acre farm, sight unseen off the internet. It sounds more like a pandemic story than from sort of 12, 13 years ago. It was 2008, and we came up here Christmas season of 2008 to collect keys to a house that was being sold to us as a teardown, and 75 acres of really rundown, not taken care of land. And there began the sort of need for us to make a plan. We shortly thereafter, end of 2009, we relocated back to Canada, took up residence in the house, initially focused on renovating it to get it up to the standard to keep us warm in the winter that we required. And then sort of started to think about what we were going to do for a living. And honestly, it was like that. I had a little bit of remote work I was able to do from our farmhouse here, recruiting to sort of pay the bills in the interim. But Mel and I really fell in love with the island, the culture, people here, the environment, and we really fell in love with this piece of land. We've been so lucky to scoop up sight unseen. We were very shocked with its features, especially given how we had purchased it. So much about what we discovered led us down this path to want to do something with the specific piece of land. And kind of in parallel to that, I had started my return to a homebrew habit I'd commenced years before. One thing led to another, and we figured out that the water quality here was amazing. We started to grow hops that grew quite well. Like I say, we were close to and following this wonderful little organic on-farm brewery and hop yard in Sorrento, British Columbia, Crono Gales, home of the greatest dark beer in all of Canada, Backhand of God, Dry Irish Stout.
Wow, okay.
And
high praise coming from you.
Yeah, and we, I know, well, it's true. We decided we wanted to do something similar, and we decided that there was a need. I think at that point there were really only 3 or 4 substantial craft breweries in Nova Scotia. So it was we felt a market that was underfilled, and we in 2012 put together a business plan for a small 7-barrel 80,000 liter a year craft brewery called Big Spruce, and Akoa and Nidak up in North Sydney bought into it, and indeed provided us some funding to get it off the ground. So on April 1st, 2013, we opened our doors with a plan to grow our business in the first year to about 80,000 liters, and sell growlers out the back door and a little bit of kegs to restaurant accounts. And if people choose to talk about our sort of ascent from there as a success story, that is, I believe, only one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that we got everything wrong right from the start, and have been spending the next 7 or 8 years trying to correct a lot of the initial missteps. We misperceived the market, and misperceived what we were going to become as a location. We've since won Tourism Nova Scotia awards for sustainable tourism. And if you'd asked me in 2012, when we came up with the business plan, whether we were starting a tourism business, I would have laughed at you. So, we really, this whole concept of a destination brewery really came into being once and as we were opening. And we've had to adapt to that. We've had to adapt to much greater quantities of business than we ever could have imagined. And that's really been our trajectory the last, we're in our 9th year now of operations. And that's all really until the last year or two we've been doing. It's expansion, improved efficiencies, improved visitation. We've really put a heavy investment on quality and visitation experience here at our brewery the last 3 or 4 years, as a way of differentiating ourselves. And that's where we stand today. We're now a business that does over 500,000 liters of beer production in a year. We own 2 breweries really here on the same location. We did a second building in 2016, 2017 with 5,500 square feet of production space and an automatic canning line. And we transformed our 5 or 6 core brands to being produced 4,500, 5,000 liters at a time instead of 800 liters at a time at this larger facility. And we really use the original brewery as a facility to make pilot batches of difference making, one-off and rarity beers that we sell to specialist locations across Nova Scotia and can and bottle for sale here at our location in Nyanza.
Right. So you kind of, in a way, what you're saying is you kind of failed upward. Your business plan, you opened the floodgates and you've just been bailing ever since.
Yeah, and truly that's what it was. We have been catching up on not just production capacity, but everything that goes with that. Parking lot facilities here for people to park their cars better and easier, especially with COVID. Bottleneck-free, unencumbered access to get beer to go and walk back to your car. Of course, when you increase production, you wind up increasing distribution. So more delivery vehicles, more water treatment, more sewage treatment, more, all this related infrastructure that goes along with just producing more beer has actually been the more difficult side of things.
Wow. Well, nice problem to have, that's for sure.
Still a problem
though. This is a personal story in my case. So a few years back, I was visiting my daughter in Saskatoon, and we went to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. And my brother-in-law who also lives there, and he said, "Oh, there's this couple that's from Tacoma, Saskatchewan, who sell beer out of their van at the farmer's market." And so we went down there, and I tried his beer, and we were talking with him, and I just happened to mention that, that there was a place back in Cape Breton where I was from called Big Spruce, and he looked at me and said, "Oh, do you know Jeremy?" It was kind of like one of those stories, where, "Oh, you must be from Canada. You're from Canada. You must know Bill, right?" In this case, it was actually true. And I said, "Well, yeah." He said, he said that they had come down there as a couple, and you would help them get started. Is that right?
Yeah, he was at a conceptual sort of stage and wanting to do something the same size as us. And in fact, he'd been put in touch with us from Diversified Metal Engineering, who was the brewery equipment manufacturer in Charlottetown that had done all of our stuff.
Right.
And they had said, "You need to speak to Jeremy and Melanie, because they've done essentially the same thing you're looking to do on a small capacity. And he can certainly help you with all kinds of hints and directional assistance as to the things you need to be considering." So yeah, we've always been, a pretty open book, open door for the industry. That's, had its challenges because the other party treats it differently every single time. But for the most part, it's been a real pleasure to help others interested in beer and interested in starting a business in beer. And it's been a fun thing in my weeks and days and months in the business to be involved in and watch the industry really expand. It's incredible to not just be part of our little thing here, but to watch something move from, I think we were license number 12-ish in the province, and that's now grown to be closer to 70 brewing licenses in Nova Scotia. We've got more craft breweries per capita than any jurisdiction in all of Canada, and that's really something to be proud of as Nova Scotians. Despite the many challenges and hurdles that still face the industry, we've got a really budding bunch of entrepreneurs and beer makers out there that are making a difference in people's experiences when they go and order a pint off tap, or when they travel to a community that has a brewery. It's great.
So that does seem to be part of the culture of that industry, is that you do support each other.
We have to, and I think we got to do it more. The industry, as things mature, you get growing pains along the way, and one of the big challenges facing Nova Scotia craft beer right now is the fact that a lot of us have moved away from the concept of high tides float all boats. It's harder to maintain the principles of that philosophy in an environment of much higher competition. And I think so many of us have gotten into the business to rule the world and be all about business, that we unfortunately often forget about needing to be all about beer.
Right. So I know back in the early days, you were active in an organization. I guess you were involved with NSLC to a large extent. In the early days, you entered a market where the table had been set by the major breweries. At least
yes, and that table is still a table that the big breweries are feeding at and set for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day.
And so I know you worked initially to get more equitable arrangements through NSLC for shelf space and the way they build and those kinds of things. How has that changed since then to now? My sense is that it's better, but
oh yeah, the both relationship and conditions with the NSLC are vastly better for all breweries and beverage alcohol manufacturers in Nova Scotia. And that has been largely in part to some major seismic shifts by them in how they treat us and how they shelf product and how they view the local industry and its importance, I think, to the local economy. I think what remains frustrating is just how long that still takes to convince them of, because there are so many more steps needed to take to continue to support the industry, and we see things needing to happen a lot quicker than they are. We got very vocal early on about quite a number of things, and 2 or 3 of the big ones have been taken care of, but still so many have not been, and that was 4 or 5 years ago that we started to make waves about these issues. So it's still a big challenge. I think it's nice to be part of a bigger group because numbers certainly assist in swaying those responsible for decisions. But at the end of the day, the way that the NSLC works is very much driven toward profit that they make, and they simply make more remit margin off of selling large corporate produced beer than they do off of ours. So that inherently gives them a bigger interest, a bigger stake in ensuring that they sell more Coors Light and ensuring that they sell more Bud Light and ensuring that they sell more Keiths. It's just not going to change. They make more per dollar of those items sold than they do on anything from a Nova Scotia craft brewery. And that's unfortunate, because that's a very, very single transaction focused way of thinking about the profit to Nova Scotia. What that way of thinking doesn't plug into the equation is the knock-on effect that the craft industry has, the number of people we hire versus big beer,
Salaries,
the
yeah.
tax those people pay on their income, the tax that's collected by the province on all these businesses being active in the economy, all of the suppliers we buy from in Nova Scotia. The truth of the matter is that the impact per liter of craft beer bought to the actual Nova Scotia economy is far greater than the impact per liter of big beer. And there's no denying that, but the NSLC does not operate like that's actually the case. I think in parallel to that, you have some challenges. There's a big difference between craft beer and pasteurized big beer. Pasteurized big beer is designed to be shipped to a warehouse, sit in months of inventory storage until it's brought to a retail shelf for sale to the customer. Craft beer is not designed to do that. Right. And yet there is no other way to work with the NSLC except through their distribution warehouse. And, we need to break that down. I think, if people are going to, the trends are strong in the hazy, hoppy IPA category, the sour beer category, the fruited beer category. These categories can only continue to be filled by craft brewers on a broader sense if there is a better distribution channel that probably we control and goes directly from our fermenters and bright tanks to store shelves for fresh purchase and consumption.
Right. Okay, perfect. I just briefly, I want to move just to your brand, like the Big Spruce brand, and the way you name your products, which is, clever wordplay, a little bit irreverent, but it certainly gets attention. So what's your thinking behind that?
Well, I think it's a reflection of who Mel and I want to be. We enjoy a healthy bit of comedy in our lives, and I think we want to bring that element of punny comedy to our brand. And I do think it resonates because it shows that the brewery is not just thinking about beer, is not just thinking about getting it into a can, but is thinking about that experience that the consumer will have when they're choosing to order that beer or buy that beer. Right. And I also think it adds another dimension to our running of the business that keeps it interesting for us and all of the staff who work on coming up with the names. It's really easy to call a beer pale ale or pilsner. And I get that some breweries do that because they want their principal brand to be front and center. But I also think, and it's just our opinion, that there's another layer to it. The sub-branding of all your beers can add resonance and interest in everyone's pursuit of your product.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Yeah, for sure. So do you still, you grew your own hops to get started? Do you still, you don't grow enough hops to supply your current needs, obviously.
Richard, we're less than 5% of what we need on an annual basis now, produced off our own hop yard. It's 280 plants. It costs us per pound 2 or 3 times what it costs us to procure organic hops commercially. So we focus on growing hops that make limited quantities of difference-making terroir beer that is unique in its hop profile to bringing the flavors and aromatics that our land puts into hops. So we've got some really good producing British varietals like UK Challenger and UK Goldings, East Kent Goldings, and so we focus on growing those and making things like pub bitters and British style beers that utilize our best varietals in terms of success of growing here in the hop yard. And that's kind of where we focus our efforts with our own hops. The rest has to be purchased because the styles we've developed and the styles that have become most popular are the ones that require hops from places like Yakima Valley and in Washington State. So we have a lot of our big production contracts with growers out there.
So is there an opportunity for, there's a lot of unused farmland in Cape Breton. Is there an opportunity to grow more hops here and to sell to places like
Oh,
yours?
there's opportunity. I think it's a degree more difficult because hops do generally like drier, warmer climates than a lot of Cape Breton can provide them with.
Okay.
And so places like the Valley and more southern type climates are more suited to it. They're a plant that likes warmth. They want a lot of water, but they don't want it all over their foliage. They want it at their bases, and they want to be able to grow in a sort of dry air climate around them. So when you go to Yakima Valley, it's basically a desert, but it's a desert that has good irrigation. It's a lot like Okanagan Valley here north of the border in BC.
Right.
So this, while opportunity exists here, more challenges exist as well too, and we certainly face them in the form of mildew, especially on an annual basis, and how it affects our yield and our growth of the plant.
Right. And you're on a slope, so you would have good drainage too.
We're on a south-facing slope.
Yeah.
We're in front of a big body of water that helps temper climate change into the late seasons, because we've got that big Bredora Lake in front of us that acts like a heat absorbent radiator that continues to keep our slope really warm late into the season. But you can't get away mainly from early season wetness and cold.
Right.
We have really cold May and Junes here in Cape Breton, because the lake actually acts as the opposite effect. Then we've had the ice not retreat out of Nyanza Bay until May long weekend many years, and that really means that for that first substantial part of the growing season, our plants are sitting in a climate which is less than ideal, too cold and too wet.
Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. So that's interesting, because I tried to grow. We have some property at Myra, and I tried to grow hops. My son and I did, not
Nice.
successfully.
They need I mean, when you have something that puts on 20 plus feet of vertical height in a year, the quantity of nitrogen you've got to put on that plant is imperceivably enormous for the average grower. Like, it even started to shock us as we got more knowledgeable about the inputs that these plants were going to need. And so like I say, it takes an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of cost. And when you can get them high quality organic from Yakima for half to a third of the price, you start to weigh your options. You have to.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Anyway, we learned it was not something to be taken lightly. So yeah. So what's next for Big Spruce?
I think for us, we've certainly reached a stage where additional production from our farm here is an impossibility. We inadvertently made that decision a few years ago when we decided to step away from free kegerators, umbrellas, and tap line installs as a way of getting more of our beer out there, and instead focused on absolute exquisite quality in the glass and experience by those visiting us here at our brewery. We are where we want to be with production. And I think continued investment in the experience here, continued investment in people's knowledge of our brand, especially as it pertains to organic certification. There are lots of opportunities there to continue to spread people's knowledge of what we're all about. That may have an inadvertent effect of increasing demand. We're still seeing demand pressure, especially on our brands at the NSLC. So we're gonna have to confront a time soon when we either can't keep up, and in fact, we sort of got into that realm July and August this year for the first time. We were behind, especially on our biggest brand, Kitchen Party Pale Ale. And we're going to have to make a call, how do we satiate more demand, or do we? I think it's probably looking at, frankly, the latter. I think we've still never distributed outside of Nova Scotia for this reason. And I think, we'll have to take a view and probably just leave things where they are, because we just don't want to mess with that quality. We don't want to mess with that brand allure of it being farm produced here in Nyanza.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So one final question, a bit of an open-ended question. If you had one piece of advice for somebody considering starting a microbrewery, what
Hmm.
might it be?
I think first of all, sit back and really ask yourself: are you trying to start something that's going to be all about business, or are you trying to start something that's going to be all about beer? You cannot be both things, and you sort of have to be mostly one or the other. And too many of us are getting in the business to be all about business,
Right.
uh, and they're forgetting the principal component, which is that you must be all about beer. So if you focus on your brand, focus on your quality, focus on your difference making attributes as a brewery. And that can be, like I say, visitation to your location. It can be the events you align yourself with, and the people in your community that you align yourself with. That's where it's all difference making and important. And I think we need more of that going forward. So that would be my number one piece of advice.
Super. Okay. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Yeah, no problem at all, Richard. Anytime. Okay.
All righty. I've
All
been
right, pal.
speaking, take care. So I've been speaking with Jeremy White, founder and alesmith at Big Spruce Brewing in Nyanza, Cape Breton. And we'll see you next time on Cape Breton Movers and Shakers.